Hey people, it's your boy D Davis here, back again with sports talking bull stuff. Um, I'm just gonna give everybody a disclaimer. This is gonna be a uh, all pro wrestling episode. So if pro wrestling isn't your thing, press like and all that. Beat the algorithm. But that's the disclaimer. But if you're curious, keep listening. But I haven't I haven't talked too much about my love for pro wrestling. I'm 40 years old and about 35, roughly 35 years of my life, I've had an infatuation with pro wrestling. A healthy infatuation. When I was a kid, I was all about it, as most kids were. You know, most kids love pro wrestling and everything. So back in those days, back in the 80s, when Hulkamania was running wild and shit. We lived through the 90s and the new generation. Bret Hitman Hart uh, has been and always will be my world champion. Um, Went through the Attitude Era, and around the Attitude Era, that's when I checked out. As a pro wrestling fanatic or enthusiast. You know, I was in high school. I'm looking around me. Girls they started developing. I was like, well, I guess I gotta leave the childish stuff behind, and I gotta get with the times. So that was my sophomore year, freshman year, later half of the sophomore year. I was like, all right, I gotta get it together. Um, Earlier part of the sophomore year, I was doing goofy stuff. I had a elbow band like the Rock and shit. I pulled that shit off and rock bottom a motherfucker in the hallway. This was good times, baby. It was great times. When DX and NWA and we was getting fingers and crock shotting each other and all types of havoc was happening in the high school of my in the halls of my high school, as were many high schools, many halls, many middle schools, many elementary schools. The good times. Anyway, uh, I don't want to talk too much about the good times because those were the good times. And as my fandom began to wane out, the wrestling industry changed, and uh, WWF became WWE, and WCW was usurped by WWE, and ECW was, y'all know the thing. Um, so, um, but what I really want to talk about is the influence of, because I can go all day about why all that happened, and um, those territory days. Because I consider myself a wrestling historian, and I can go back on his YouTube and watch old stuff, and I can be entertained by the good old days. I love '70s wrestling. It's good times. Um, Matches in the '60s were good. Check them out. I've watched matches in the '40s and '50s. Pretty good. In a sense of pro wrestling, things made sense. And why I am making this, why I've spent 4 minutes, hopefully entertaining you all, by my whole diatribe and going on about pro wrestling, because I want to go in on a certain individual that I think has had a um, pretty major impact on the downfall of pro wrestling. I'm not going to solely put upon this one man because that would be just silly. But I think this one man has had a huge ton of influence on pro wrestling and the pro wrestlers themselves. One of the dirt sheet guys. Mr. Dave Meltzer, you know, and as someone who I consider myself a wrestling historian, I think he has a certain level of credibility when it comes to wrestling in a sense of his historical um I don't want to say perspective because it's all distorted now, but I don't even want to say his analysis because it's all distorted now. So I guess go back and read his old shit, or listen to his old stuff in the '80s. I guess when he was a rational wrestling fan, or wrestling journalist, or wrestling reporter, because now he's just a sycophant, and 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 I think that anybody who invests that amount of time watching everything, um, you know, everything just pro wrestling. Like you got to watch every territory and get all this information. I mean, it's a service to the people, but like it kind of. I don't want to go. I don't want to do that. That's a. I don't want to psychoanalyze. I'm not here on this wrestling channel for that. But his promotion of what is considered good or great has inspired a generation of pro wrestlers to do things that have went against the logic or just the logic or the booking of what pro wrestling should be. Um, and I don't know why I'm looking up for. That's terrible. Um, you ain't, you ain't here to see that. Um, but I was looking at pipes. But his desire for fast paced uh matches or high work rate matches has really taken away from the believability of pro wrestling. Now I'm not going to be a 40-year-old man and say it has taken away from the believability of pro wrestling and not say that I've heard all my life. That's some fake bullshit. Yeah, of course. But at the heart of pro wrestling, it's supposed to be a simulated fight or contest or wrestling match, um, above amateur wrestling. It's supposed to be entertaining. So part of entertaining is is psychology of two people competing against each other. Either you want um, a belt, either you want a shot at a belt, either you want some money, either you want to win a girl, either you want to show that you're tougher, or you just want to be a dick to the other competitor who's hopefully a baby face, someone that the fans could really get behind and be like, yeah, that's our champion. We want him to win. That's what a babyface is. And the heel, someone who's just dastardly, who just wants to cause chaos and havoc. So my definitions of heels. And since that whole thing has been distorted, I can't totally blame it on Dave Meltzer. Can't do that. Did the NWA, did that distort, black and white and give us areas of gray? Did Stone Cold Steve Austin do that? Who knows? Did the people... See, this is a deeper conversation I just popped in my head. Did the people tire of the cookie cutter babyface heel that the World Wrestling Federation, Vince McMahon Jr., tried to put upon the public? Was it a backlash of Hulk Hogan? Who knows? Because I think Hulk Hogan um, got to his expiration date. And because he got to his expiration date, especially in WCW, like people were just sick of him. And I think the fans of the South really didn't take to him that much to begin with because he was one of them damn Yankees. And they had an allegiance to Flair. And they was just doing dumb, stupid stuff. The Dungeon of Doom and all that stuff. Like, stop it. Um, so did the people buck away from, that baby face heel, and I think it was a rebellion against the baby faces and the heels, because the heels were just dumb and the baby faces were just this is the 90s, so this is like your new generation. And Bret Hart was a fighting champion, and he gets slack from Flair because he's like, what did he draw? And I was like, all right. He was World Wrestling Federation champion for, roughly 5 years, 92 to 97, on and off. Five championship bouts, stints as champion. And you can't help who you're booked against. Like, it was a downtime in the entire industry. So for Flair to say that, this is another thing. People shit on Kevin Nash's championship run in '95. I'm like, man, he's against fucking Mabel. Like, what do you expect? Or the British Bulldog. Love British Bulldog. Love Davey. But, he can't. He had to be in a match where post 80s, like, Davey couldn't lead a match and Kevin Nash couldn't lead a match. So, as you can see, Diesel had his best matches against Bret and Shawn Michaels. And that's what the WWF at that time, from 95 to 97. That was 2 bad years, like, where everybody left, because they had Macho Man in 94 and then do nothing with him. That could have been a good, run with Bret, Shawn Michaels. Damn it. Hope I'm cool. Still recording. That could have been a good run. Hogan left in 93. They didn't have no heels because all the heels was doing voodoo or garbage men or matadors. Goofy shit. Back to Meltzer, man. Because I can go on and on and on about the distortion between heels and baby faces. Like, did people just want the badass? Like, it didn't matter if the NWO was heel or baby face. I guess it didn't matter. Like, if their tactic, I guess Hogan messed it up because he was a heel. He was a face wrestling as a heel, working as a heel for all the time. He was on top in the 80s, like scratching your back and poking your eyes. But at least what I can say is he wrestled that way because the heels of those days were dastardly bastards who deserved to get dastardly tactics placed upon them, and that was the beauty of pro wrestling. So I can't go to Hogan in the 80s. I can't disparage his wrestling in the 80s. It's easy to do it, but I can't. When you really think about it, you gotta think about shit. Back to Meltzer. But that video game style of pro wrestling, and I love Owen Hart, but I guess in the 87, 88 Wrestler's Dirt Sheet Examiner, he had Owen Hart as like Rookie of the Year. And like, nobody knew Owen Hart in 87, 88. Like, was he amazing in the ring? Absolutely. But nobody knew him. Like, you gotta promote people. And Owen Hart was doing all these flips and everything. And like, that really didn't get over. Like until he like slowed down and like, you know, and I'm not saying he wasn't doing that, but like it was a lot of flips and like because Owen was in Mexico and Japan and all that stuff. So like that's what they do over there, but like it really doesn't translate to American pro wrestling. So until he came, slowed it down and basically got into that angle with Brett in '93 leading into '94. That's when he really got over. Um, but amazing in the ring. But as like he couldn't be rookie of the year. No one knew him, but it was just based off the fact that Owen did a lot of. He had a high work rate, as Meltzer would say, and as you can see that's 87, 88, and as we get into 2004, he's all about work rate, and I'm gonna tell you something about work rate as I've become a pro wrestling enthusiast. That work rate ain't gonna get you over. That work rate gonna get you in a wheelchair really fucking early because you got to do a lot of shit to entertain the pro wrestling fan or what's left of the pro wrestling fan because as you can see in AEW, which is the company that Mr. Meltzer champions the most, a lot of work rate. Nobody. I mean, it's few people that could talk. The angles ain't shit. It ain't pro wrestling. But I hear they're doing 6 and 7 star matches and everything. So that, yeah. And it's come out before, like, that's going to make the AEW marks mad. And they'll probably be giving me, I hear they're terrible. Like, they'll give you death threats and everything. Or they'll troll you and all that. Whatever. It's fake bullshit. And why are you doing stuff like that? Don't you have anything better to do and to invest yourself in? Like you gonna troll somebody or dox somebody, dox somebody because they have a different opinion on pro wrestling? It's fake bullshit. Get a life. Anyway, this is the people that champion Meltzer. They're people that they don't have a grip on reality, and there's a wrestling term, I guess. You have to educate your audience to your product, and that's how you book. That's your booking philosophy and how you see your company, your promotion, how you see it to be ran. And with that booking philosophy, like you just got to stick to fundamentals of your booking philosophy. And that usually draws success if you keep it in a pro wrestling term. If people can talk. First and foremost, you really don't have to be that good of a worker to get over if you can talk. You don't need 20-minute matches. You don't need 30-minute matches. 6-minute match. 8-minute match. 10-minute match. Do some shit. Make it entertaining. People pay their money to be entertained. People watch that television to see some entertainment. You doing flips and doing all the same bullshit moves that everybody else does and then did, it becomes repetitive and it's not that entertaining unless you are predisposed by your what did I say? Your education to wrestling. That just is what it is. That is what you expect wrestling to be. But I'm old enough, and I got this here YouTube. I can get on some shit from 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and I can hear entertaining promos, and I can watch entertaining matches. And it's not all about flips and tricks and, well, it's about a lot of tricks, but it's a bunch of bullshit that fits in the sense of pro wrestling. Whereas all these moves, high impact moves that would seemingly kill a motherfucker, knock somebody out, maim somebody, they get up 3-4 seconds after. And as a casual, you flipping through the channels and you see somebody get power bombed on top of steel stairs, and then they're walking around 10 seconds later. You're like, oh, this is some phony bullshit. In the sense of some phony bullshit. So that's a double negative. Do you understand this? But this is what Dave Meltzer promotes. These are 7-star matches and things like that. And as somebody who has watched wrestling for a long time, and many people, I'm not the only one that's saying these things, thinking these things, people who know better, they turn a deaf ear and they don't watch. And what we have left now is, as ratings show, on both sides of, the spectrum, or I guess, all companies. I only speak about WWE and AEW. I ain't got time for all the other stuff. I ain't got time for WWE, AEW, even though I'm here talking bullshit for 20 minutes. But, I ain't got shit else to do. But yeah, excuse me. Here we are. Because Mr. Meltzer champions that style of wrestling. And as somebody who wants to believe pro wrestling and, is a quote unquote mark of pro wrestling, I'll own the shit. It is what it is. I ain't a goofy mark. I know that those moves actually cause damage upon the bodies of the performers, even though it's some fake bullshit. So, me just having compassion and caring, why would you put your body through this? Going through glass, and I know it's gimmicked and everything, falling through tables and shit. I know everything's gimmicked and everything, but you're taking unnecessary risks. Those ladder matches, those multi-person ladder matches, somebody gonna lose their fucking life in that shit. From one of them companies, or one of these companies doing this shit in YMCAs and shit, churches and shit. Somebody gonna lose their life doing that shit. And it comes to a point who are you entertaining? And I think Meltzer has lost the point. He's encouraged people. They're not wrestling for the audience. They're wrestling for themselves. You're supposed to do shit that entertains the audience, not in the short term by doing jumping off shit. Doing death-defying things that don't make sense. High impact things that don't make sense, that you just pop up from and you don't sell. Things like that. That's gonna get you, it might get you a bunch of pops in a match, but that's one match, and you've endured all that physical toll on your body for one match that you really didn't have to do, because no one's gonna believe that shit next week. That's the difference between them old school people, old school performers, because there's people today that yearn for old school pro wrestling. And they'll go on to Peacock and WWE Network, and they'll go on to YouTube and these other apparatuses to seek out the glory days of old wrestling. How many people's gonna be doing that for these gimmicked up death matches that not even 1,000,000 people watch. How many people gonna come back for that shit? How many people gonna really think highly of that shit? You know, there's matches from people, wrestling fans from, the past era, and they really think highly of certain matches. Matches I really think highly of. Brett and Piper at WrestleMania 8. Savage Steamboat, WrestleMania 3. There's this match between Roddy Piper and Jack Briscoe. Man, that was like a TV match, 14 minutes. Jack Briscoe looked like he was beating shit out of Roddy Piper. I done watched matches with Ole Anderson against jobbers. Not enhancement talent. Call him what he is. Just it is what it is. You gonna put somebody over. You're gonna do a job. That's what we need to bring back. Because that's how you properly build somebody. Just beat motherfuckers on TV. That's how you get over, baby. Not these 20, 30-minute matches and everything. Just beat them. Just do your moves and beat them with style, too. You young wrestlers, watch some, Midnight Express. Bobby and Dennis Condrey. Watch Dennis Condrey. Oh, man, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Watch that Midnight Express. The way he was just dogging them. Heels don't dog no more. They don't just dog them out. Ole Anderson, you dog them out. Just, I want to say Road Warriors, but that's a little too much. I don't want to say Road Warriors. You feel bad for the jobbers. You be like, God damn. Everybody can't take a beating like the Mulkey brothers. But back to Meltzer. He just had a terrible influence on pro wrestling because them 7-star matches, if they 7 and 10-star matches and shit, nobody remember them. And nobody getting over, and the wrestling fan base keeps dwindling because in the glory days of wrestling, I don't want to say the glory days of wrestling, at the height of the with the Nitro and Raw feud, there was 10 million people watching wrestling. I don't want to say that's the glory days of pro wrestling because back in the territory days, there was millions of people watching wrestling in different territories throughout the country. So there was probably 40 million people watching wrestling during the territory days. So, WWE does a great job of spinning things or recreating history. But, those who know. So, but we'll just go from, 98, 97. At the height of that ratings war, it was around 10 million people watching pro wrestling. Right now, you have WWE on a great show. They might get 2.5 on a great show. They might get 2.5, maybe 3. I don't hold me to this. Correct me if you must in the comments. Thank you for the correction. I don't know. AEW under 1 million. It's fluctuating between 750. 650 and 600 and maybe 850. So maybe 4 million people watching wrestling, and that's a high estimate. I don't think it's 4 million people watching wrestling. So clearly pro wrestling isn't what it was. And we have people who are encouraging bad habits from, pro wrestlers, or it ain't pro wrestling no more, entertainers now. And at the heart of pro wrestling, people want to see pro wrestling. People want to see hair being pulled and the heels cheating, and we need tag team wrestling back, really. We need some just tag teams that know how to, we need some heels that know how to cheat. Actually, what we need rules back in pro wrestling. We need referees to enforce the rules of pro wrestling. Without the rules of pro wrestling, without the referee strongly saying, no, you can't stop his head after the 5 count. You can't do it no more. Or, when the competitors are outside of the ring, you hold them to the 10 count. And if one of the competitors doesn't make it back in the ring before the 10 count, you count them out. Or if both don't make it back, you count them out. Because in the sense of a competition, when two men are going back and forth with each other competing, you may not hear the referees count. So you count them out. And that can be used to advance a storyline or angle if you book it right. Little things like that. When you use the people in the white and black striped shirts when they're disqualified for breaking the rules of a match, I said, oh man, this guy must have been really heated. They must have been really going at it. He was disqualified for the match. Oh, well, I wonder what happens with the other guy. I wonder will he get his get back? Will he? That's what the viewer wants to see. See, it's things like that in pro wrestling. Like, we have to get back to the fundamentals of pro wrestling. Once we get back to the fundamentals of pro wrestling and scale things back, because not every person should be having a 20-minute match. No. Who are you to have a 20-minute match? And in the context of a 2-hour show, most wrestling shows are 2 hours, a 10-minute match is more than fine. You entertain your crowd, get your shit in, sell a little bit, win. Win by disqualification, win by count out. Doesn't matter. It's pro wrestling. And then have somebody else do their thing or cut a promo. Hopefully the person can cut a promo, speak well. Hopefully they just don't think that pro wrestling is just doing moves in the ring. Certainly isn't. Not at all. Got to be able to be good on that stick. Pause. But that's a pro wrestling term. I just listen to a lot of podcasts and shit, so I haven't hit the ropes, haven't taken a bump, so I just well researched. But yeah, Dave Meltzer, he is someone that has heavily and negatively influenced the pro wrestling business in a negative way, and he needs to be called out, and he needs to be completely shunned from the pro wrestling industry, because when you compare the Young Bucks to the not the Midnight Express, the Rock and Roll Express. Tony Khan's a good booker. This man is lying to you. He's insulting your intelligence. He's insulting all of our intelligence. He's lying to all of us. And he does it every day. And, this is a channel that is sports based. I talk a lot of basketball. And, we have to do, it's imperative that we do things to change the narrative that has been created. And there's a narrative that has been created that Dave Meltzer's opinion and thoughts on pro wrestling, modern pro wrestling, current pro wrestling, and even his thoughts on past pro wrestling it doesn't matter anymore. And he needs to be totally discredited and taken out the game, and not to say that, I should take over, because I'm not a wrestling sycophant, I listen to the podcast, and while I'm doing other shit. And, you know, that's how time goes by. So, but if you like what I'm saying and you think my wrestling insight and thoughts and maybe I haven't gotten too much into history and all that stuff, but if you think what I'm saying is rocking and rolling and I'm going way too fucking long, because most people's attention spans really can't go this long, especially, you know, I'm just in your face and all like this. But if you're liking what I'm saying and you're thinking that I can, you know, be the new person that influences and guides the new generation of pro wrestlers or the modern generation of pro wrestlers, if you're thinking that you've been led astray and they're not doing what it takes to get them over, lead them my way. I think I got something for them. Trying to show what it takes to get over. I've been watching this shit for a long time. I know what you gotta do. I know what it takes to entertain the public. You just gotta tap in, baby. It ain't all about them flips and shit. That ain't gonna do it. Nah, you gotta be able to talk that shit. If you talk that shit with conviction and know what you talking about in the context of pro wrestling, and there's a reason as to why you're talking that shit. Because I could be a dastardly ill and say, I don't like him. And because I don't like him, I'm going to torment him every chance I get. And every chance I get to torment him, I'm going to like it a lot. You hear me? You hear me? Yeah. I mean it. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Because I'm crazy a little bit. Things like that, you know. If you a heel, what if you mean it? I done heard what you said. And I don't care nothing about what you said. You think you gonna intimidate me by your words and your big size? No, I got the people behind me and we riding. They gonna ride for me. You hear them? The people. They gonna see me do it. We gonna do it. And everything you talking, that don't mean nothing, player. Sucker. Things like that. You gotta entertain the public, baby. You know, make them feel it. And when you make them feel it, they gonna like it. And if they really feel it, they gonna fucking love it. And that's what it is, baby. This is D Davis, Mr. 360. Here, sports talk and bull stuff. Going in on, you know, my first love. Wrestling was my first love before basketball. I gotta say it. I got pictures of me flexing and shit. This little picture of me flexing up there. So it is what it is. Like, share, subscribe. If you're digging what I'm talking about, fuck with me. If you don't like what I'm saying, put it in the comments, you know. It is what it is. D Davis. Out. This. I ain't gonna say